Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to the channel. We're going to talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, where we are going with the story of Cal Kestis. Now, I'm going to break this review down in two parts and make them relatively in depth, but I don't want to drown them out too much. But first, I'm going to go over the mechanics. Then, when I take the story elements, and I will warn you when a spoiler is ahead, you were warned. But I'm going to go over these gameplay mechanics because while I was playing the game, I actually felt like they changed it up a bit, and there's some things that really worked and things that didn't. It plays very similar to the first game where you have your meditation stations, you can rest, which resets all the enemies, and then you could go build your skills while you're meditating. So it's an interesting game where you the same build your skills, get the perks, and make your guy a beast. Ends up just coming back. It's like an RPG mechanic. But we've played it all before. It's nothing really special. We've seen this for 20 plus years if you're my age. So once you've seen the skill building thing, you've seen it all. It's just your typical Star Wars RPG mechanics wise. But it was an interesting change up because there was some things that I liked, and then there's just kind of things that I didn't like. One of the things that really bothered me is when you tap both sticks and all the enemies around you freeze. This was just a change up from the first game where you can freeze one enemy at a time to get an advantage and get them to open up striking wise. So I thought that it was a bit of a far cry. Plus, once you hit them once, they kind of come back to normal speed and snap out of it. So it kind of made everything a little harder. But near the end of the game, and this is going to get into spoilers, you get like this overpowered rage mode where you can basically embrace the dark side. And then that was way more useful than the freeze. So I didn't use the freeze much in the game, but near the end, when I found that dark side power, I used it to oblivion, and I really used it to overpower a lot of enemies. And then when I go back now and just explore, I like to use it. But heading into the lightsaber forms, in the first game, we had two forms, basically, or three, because the split saber was a overpowered attack. You had one blade, two blades, and then the split saber, so you can alternate between those in the first game. But they decided to make it one blade, two blade, split saber. Then what they do is they take a blaster and a saber and then a crossguard. So I get what they were doing with this. These 5 lightsaber forms are very different from the first game. In fact, part of me liked the first game a little bit better just because, in my opinion, just because you add more doesn't always mean it's bad. I'm not saying, or it's good. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, so to speak. But when I was playing the game, I typically stuck with single blade and double blade and just really powered up those two lightsaber techniques, and then everything else was secondary because I really just wanted to keep it simple. When I used the crossguard lightsaber, it just kind of seemed very slow. It was very powerful, and I get what they were going for. Every lightsaber form you choose is going to have its perks, and every single one is going to have its shortcomings. So I don't recommend going into a big group with a crossguard, but if you're coming across a huge enemy and you need powerful swings, then that's the thing for you. But I typically didn't use it too much, and I oftenly just kept one blade and two blade. On my second playthrough, I really started playing around with those, and I wanted to give some credit because they're not a horrible thing. I don't want to say that it's bad or they just ruined the game by doing this. Oh, how dare me, an entitled gamer, thinking that you should program the game the way I wanted you to do it. But they did have their place. The crossguard, when I felt it was necessary, I would switch to it. And I went from thinking it was kind of a useless lightsaber form, because the crossguard, if you watch the movies, see the TV shows, see the games, you notice that it comes under a lot of controversy. Is it really needed by the science of the lightsaber? Then you have a bunch of nerds coming to the table and debating the science of a non-existent weapon. But I'm going to look at it, it's for fun, it's for style, it's for, just for us to have something to play around with. I really loved playing around with the split sabers on my second playthrough just because the pressure was off and I played around with different things a little bit more. But there's so much in the game where those lightsaber forms are just. Sometimes it could just be like, okay, I don't want to just map it out. If I want to get technical and seem smart, then yeah, I will. But it was one of those bittersweet things. One hand, it's less is more. I really wish it was just one blade, two blade, and then split saber attack, but they did those 5 lightsaber forms, and it was all right. The force powers that they have, you unlock them as you go. Those are pretty standard. I don't have any complaints with those because once you learn force slam, force levitate, force pull, force push, the force dash, you get the charm that enables you to go through gates. Those made the gameplay a lot smoother. They made you very fluid in your movement, and it actually added a little bit of liquidity to what I consider a clunky game, because these Jedi games are very clunky and sometimes they have very slow mechanics. That's just the way they're designed. Sometimes there's some bosses. I think you guys know that giant 3-eyed frog, the spawn of Ogda, I think it was called, really caused a lot of people problems. I remember playing that and the game was so clunky that I had no chance at times, and I went online to literally think, is this me who's just having problems, or am I just trash at this game? And a lot of people were saying the same thing. This is how game developers should not code their bosses. This is how game developers should not design their bosses, because it was a pain, and I would not want to go on Jedi Grandmaster difficulty and face this thing down, because I just don't want to torture myself. I'm a masochist, but I'm not that much of a masochist. But moving on from a bunch of different mechanics and gameplay, we're going to move on to the story. And let me tell you, I'm going to say right now, spoilers coming, whether you want to or not. 3, 2, 1. Don't say I didn't warn you. If you are not out, that's your fault. Now starting, we have Cal Kestis. It has been years since Jedi Fallen Order, where everyone has kind of gone their separate ways. You start off with Cal, and he's got a friend named Bode. They have a whole team that does jobs. It's like a mercenary group that they put together. I thought it was interesting, and then he goes and seeks out the people from Jedi Fallen Order, like Marin, who's the love of his life. You have Seer, his Jedi master, and I really like what they did with Seer becoming a full-fledged Jedi. You even have this moment in the game near the end where you get to play as her, and it really showed what she was like back in the day. I love Seer as a character. I think that she's well written, and that's the thing about these Jedi games. I think these characters are great. As much as sometimes the mechanics when I play are a little buggy, I thought that the story was very well written. There was a little bit of a cop-out at the end where they lose the compass to the planet they're trying to get to, and then it's hidden in somewhere else, and they have to go through this wormhole that they found at the beginning of the game that looks super dangerous, but it was just like always there. I see the setup. I was kind of like, this is just kind of cop out when they could have used the Force to find it or something, but that's just not something I would have done when writing this, but the writers made the writing. It wasn't too bad. It was just one of those things where I questioned it. But the rest of the game, where they really draw it out, the romance between Cal and Marin, I was actually invested in it because I actually liked them as a pair. I thought that they worked really good together. I thought that they were great characters. You understand their past and how they met, and then how it comes forward. They're older, they're more mature, they're more willing to partner up, and they're a very great team. And by the end of the game, you really see that they are an amazing team. I had no complaints about it. I saw Seer being that Jedi Master, and especially that fight with Darth Vader was amazing. And then your pilot friend is definitely back. He's always the comedic relief. I think he's all right. I know that there has to be some guy who's just that goof, and that pilot is that goof. I think he's cool. Some people thought he was annoying, a gimmick, but just, hey, man, so anything to lighten up the mood, because the game gets very, very serious at the end. And where I was going with this game and this story, I did not really understand like where they were going to go that really took it off. I was kind of lost through playing it, but then they bring it up, and it's like Cal reaches his breaking point because a lot of bad things have happened. He's been betrayed by certain people, he's lost certain friends, and he's just had enough. And this is where the game mechanic switches from being able to pause everybody to that dark side rage, and that's Cal dipping into the dark side. And you really understand, like, going over the edge and giving into darkness to win is a major theme that really made itself apparent by the end. It was kind of ominous in the beginning, and then it took off at the end, and I thought it was really well done. It is a common Star Wars story arc for any Force user to start embracing the dark side, wanting to go out, rage, and kill a bunch of people, but I actually thought it was pretty good. It wasn't bad at all. But they did it very well. They did it in a way where it was very personal. You felt Cal's pain, and you see first and foremost how someone could be tempted by the dark side. And he really did use the dark side at the end a lot, and to the point where it was like, yeah, he's at a very major risk in their third game for getting yellow eyes. And I think there's going to be a major choice at the end, and so you're going to choose the light side or dark. Obviously, in my prediction in the third game, if he chooses the dark side, he's going to lose everybody. But if he chooses to do the light side, then I think things are going to be very well. I think that's something they're going to do at the end, so you could give the universe multiple endings, because Cal Kestis is a great character. Seeing everything go down in that story, and you really are invested in him. And this second game was a bit of a cliffhanger for him. I'm going to be waiting a few years to see the next one come out. I hope I get to see this one, because they actually really knocked it out of the park on a cliffhanger for the second game. There's a lot of stuff that they can work with. I really just hope that the writers for the third game are already keeping notes about how they can make this flow nicely, because one thing I hate is, like, the transition from Halo 4 to Halo 5 was kind of really bad, and I bring it back to that because they really dropped the ball. Like, all three of those games for the 4, 5, and Infinite were just not connected. These two were very well connected, so I don't put it past EA to make the third one very connected to these two. But yes, I think that it's going to be a good game in the future, and overall, I just enjoyed the story. The mechanics were a little off, but I powered through it. I would give this game a solid 8 out of 10, because these games are pretty good. They're not perfect. They always try to play with it around. I give them points for effort, but sometimes these mechanics fell flat. But overall, I highly recommend you guys go out, get this game. It's a little pricey. Games are becoming $70 now, which bites. But we'll get through it. And don't embrace the dark side, and I will see you next time on this video channel. So I will see you guys later. Peace.